Welcome to the first ever episode of the Brehl Politics Podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Brehl. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk a little bit about Trump's decision about a month and a half ago, December 4th, 2017, to shrink two of our nation's national monuments, specifically the Bears Ears National Monument and Grand Staircase Escalante. These are two monuments that are both in Utah. And I want to talk today about the environmental, cultural, legal, and economic ramifications of this action. So on December 4th of last year, Trump announced he would be downsizing these two national monuments in Utah. He said he would downsize Bears Ears by about 1.1 million acres. That's 85% of its current area. And Grand Staircase Escalante by about 50%, or 94 million acres, which is 50%, not 94 million, 0.94 million acres, which is 50% of 1.87 million acres. And he made this decision after his Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke, made a review of 27 national monuments that were created in the last few decades, and decided ultimately, Trump decided that these two would be the best to shrink. This news is, well, it's not really news right now. But I feel like this is important to talk about, given that that 9 out of 12 members of the National Park Service have resigned in disgust because the members felt like they weren't really being heard. This is not surprising, given that people have resigned their posts from the EPA, that reports regarding climate science that were antithetical to what the president's political agenda was. Scientists who have made reports on that have been barred from having their work published. So this is not really surprising. Now, Trump could have any reason. There could be a number of reasons that Trump decided to cut these monuments. First of all, he won Utah last election, but it was pretty close. A lot of people thought it was going to go to Evan McMullin. He wasn't doing very well with the Mormon vote, so it is possible that by shrinking the amount of public land in the state, that he's trying to win some votes. It's also possible that because both of these monuments have land that is sacred to Native Americans, it's possible. Actually, I think Bears Ears does. I'm not sure. I think both do, actually. Dylan, could you check that?
Yeah.
Thanks. It could be just that Trump is being racist, which we know is a pretty common phenomenon now, especially in light of his recent shithole comments. But it is also possible that he just wants to kowtow to the oil and gas industry, because there are coal fields, gas fields, there's uranium, and there is oil in these areas. But right now, I want to talk about what this is actually going to do. These monuments were created under President Clinton and President Obama using the Antiquities Act. It was an act signed into law by President Roosevelt in 1906 to protect areas of land that had archaeological and natural significance. It was an effort to protect culturally valuable land and land that had a lot of natural beauty, by giving the president power to declare large swaths of land as national monuments. And this has done a big job in ensuring that a lot of our history is protected. So under this act, the president has the power to declare areas of land as national monuments. The question at hand, however, is, does the president have the legal right to declare these areas, to shrink these areas? I know that Bears Ears has a lot of historical significance. There are Navajo huts that are literally hundreds of years old. There are pieces of pottery littered around I shouldn't say littered, scattered around the area of the monument. And in both sites, there are a lot of paleontological pieces of beauty. And this is important to protect if we are going to allow any mining to happen. We need to make sure that this stuff is protected because it's valuable. But the question at hand is, while the president has the authority to declare areas of land as national monuments without congressional approval, the question is, does he or he at this point, have the power to shrink these areas? Woodrow Wilson, according to the Washington Post, did have the Mount Olympus National Monument. He cut that area in half, but this was obviously a long time ago. It's very rare that a president actually downsizes the area of a monument. And also, according to the Washington Post, many legal scholars believe that the 1976 Federal Land and Management Act actually gives Congress the right to alter the size of monuments. This case is currently being argued in court. Many groups have filed lawsuits against the president, including environmental groups, Native American groups, and whatnot. The White House has asked that these lawsuits be consolidated. We'll see what the courts say about this. Does the president have the power to do this? I know that he may not have the power to do this if he uses the Antiquities Act as justification. Whether he has the power to do it using executive orders, I'm not sure. I know that executive orders have the full force of law. Anybody who works in the executive branch, anyone who works for the president, who works in the many agencies that are controlled by the executive branch, has to obey executive orders. But the president cannot order the general public to do certain things. So we'll see if he has the power to do this, and we will provide information on that when it comes out. So we've talked about the cultural implications. We've talked about the environmental implications. There's a lot of coal underneath these national monuments. There are coal fields, gas fields, uranium fields, and there are gas fields. Yeah, oil, coal, gas, and uranium. So the question is whether, now that this has been downsized, now that these monuments have been downsized, will the mining action that many people are hoping will happen to provide jobs, will it actually take place? After Grand Staircase Escalante was opened, there was supposed to be a new coal mine opening in that area, according to National Geographic, but the government bought the leases for it, and it never opened. There was also a coal plant that was supposed to open, but it closed in the financial crisis. I think I'm getting that correct. It was not a coal plant; it was a lumber mill. I'm sorry. It was a lumber mill in a county that was neighboring the Grand Staircase Escalante monument. A lot of people argue that because of the scrutiny and the stigma that would come from working near a national monument, that it deterred the company from going through with this. However, what's important to consider is that a lot of the industries that would supposedly benefit from this downsizing are already kind of going downhill anyway. During the Cold War, there was a lot of talk about nuclear power, but after the 3 Mile Island incident in Pennsylvania, where we almost had a nuclear meltdown and radiation was released into the air, there has been a lot of speculation about nuclear power over its safety. It's currently very clean, but we don't know how to deal with the waste. As for coal, well, Trump can try to save the coal industry all he wants, but now wind and solar are doing better. They are actually proving to be competitive and in many cases superior. California is selling off some of its, it's not even selling off, it's giving away some of its solar power to Arizona for free because it's producing so much energy. In the beginning, these were not superior in the market because the oil industry was already well established. But once the Obama administration started granting subsidies to the solar and wind industry, it was enough to get the ball rolling, and now they actually are self-sufficient despite Trump's aims to cut subsidies to them. So the uranium industry and the coal industry are certainly going downhill. Whether the natural gas industry and the oil industry do, well, we know that that's going to happen in the future because these industries are all, these are non-renewable energies, and wind and solar are already making good strides. And another question is whether these industries are going to want to go to these areas, because they are not quite sure what the court's going to say. They don't know if President Trump is going to get voted out of office in 2020 and the monument's going to be resized by a Democratic president. And there may just be other areas around the country where oil exploration will be more practical. But currently, in neighboring counties of Grand Staircase, Escalante, the tourism generates $78 million of revenue, according to National Geographic. And the problem is that this only takes place during the summer, and in the winter, the economy looks pretty bleak. School enrollment is dropping in those counties, and when tourists leave, according to National Geographic, there's only one restaurant open in the town of Escalante, and that was a Subway during every winter. This is according to a guy named Drew Parkin, who's a resource manager who once worked at the monument but is now a vocal opponent of it. I'm quoting National Geographic directly. As for other industries, well, cattle ranching, according to National Geographic, is also continuing to do well because the ranchers are just ranching on the public land. So whether that land becomes privately owned or not, it's not really going to make much of a difference. So tourism is helping during the summer months. It's just waning during the winter months. And we really don't know what's going to happen once the monuments actually shrink. We don't know what's going to happen. The main thing that we can say, however, is that, at least in my opinion, we don't want to be the type of country where we have to think about people's jobs, where we have to think about people's well-being when considering protecting our cultural and the natural and cultural beauty of our landscapes. There should be enough of a safety net in place so that people can get retrained. There should be enough of a safety net so that people can find work. If Trump really wants to help rural Americans, the best way to do that would be to actually fund agencies that help diversify the economies of rural America and actually strengthen the social safety net. Trump's budget proposal last year proposed steep cuts to these agencies in many of the states that voted for him. And he's also protested the taking down of Confederate statues because he thinks that they are important to our history. If he can say that it's important to leave Confederate statues up because they're important to our history, he can leave some Native American land and keep it from the uranium and oil industry. My friend Anton said, we took the Native Americans' land, you could at least throw them a few bucks. A lot of this land is considered sacred by Native Americans, and it also just has a lot of cultural and historical significance. It's important that we protect all our history, not just the history of our white ancestors, but also the history of people who have been here long before. Currently, tourists come to the land. They visit these monuments, and they do cause some damage to them. According to National Geographic, they damage the huts. They use them for firewood. They take artifacts home for themselves. We need to do a better job teaching people how to respect ancient archaeological sites, in my opinion. Perhaps one way that we could boost employment in these rural areas is by increasing how many National Park Service members are actually on these sites. Maybe we can employ some locals. All in all, the government needs to do more to protect our cultural and natural beauty. It needs to do more to strengthen the social safety net so that we don't have to choose between protecting our cultural and natural beauty and people being employed. We should just be diversifying the economy of rural America so that people have employment opportunities. And we just need to be delivering on these promises. And the only way that we can do that is by getting money out of politics and not being beholden to the oil industry and the gas industry and the uranium industry. We need to make sure that we are answering the wishes of the American people, not corporations and special interests. So we will see where this court decision takes us. We'll see what Trump decides to do. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. Hello viewers, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us and follow us on social media, which can be found in the description below. Please feel free to comment and share your thoughts. If you have any questions, general inquiries, or you'd like to suggest future show topics, please feel free to send your thoughts to brehlpolitics@gmail.com. Thank you.